thanks to a 9-0 decision from the U.S. Supreme Court. An MS-13 gang member, citizen not of the United States, but El Salvador, will not be coming back to this country. You know what? You break our laws, you don't respect our borders and sovereignty, that means you go home. To the utter dismay of fake news, CNN. Take a look.
Do you plan to ask President Bukele to help return the man who your administration says was mistakenly deported? The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
Well, let me ask Pam, would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, two courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country.
Would you answer that question also, please?
Yes, gladly. So, as Pam mentioned, there's an illegal alien from El Salvador. So, with respect to you, he's a citizen of El Salvador. So, it's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens as a starting point. As two immigration courts found that he was a member of MS-13. When President Trump declared MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that he was no longer eligible under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States. So he had a deportation order that was valid.
Can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm supposed to be suggesting that I smuggle terrorists into the United States, right?
It's always
how can I return him to the United States? Like I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, the question is preposterous.
Law and order, safety, security, respect our laws, border sovereignty, come in, but come in legally. Now, tonight we can report that 11 more violent illegal immigrants, including 7 Tren de Aragua gang members, were deported to El Salvador and their notorious prison system over the weekend. President Trump has a duty to protect all of you and our way of life. What happened under Biden at the border is unforgivable. We will pay the price for his open border policies for decades likely to come. And by the way, today, the illegal immigrant who killed a Maryland mother of 5, we've spoken of her often, Rachel Morin, thankfully convicted of murder, but we should never forget the pain, the suffering caused by what was the most preventable national security crisis that Joe and Kamala created at our border. Now, thankfully, as promised, President Trump has secured our borders, is now deporting as many criminal illegals as possible. By the way, if you didn't come here legally, you are a criminal. And all it took was leadership. We're seeing the same thing now when it comes to trade. There are now more than 100 countries that are begging to negotiate with the Trump White House. 15 hard deals are on the table. But if you're watching the state-run legacy media mob this morning, you might have seen Janet Yellen once famously promised that person that inflation was transitory. Well, she referred to Donald Trump's economic vision as a pipe dream. Take a look.
I don't understand the rationale for the tariffs. Perhaps it's to bring back American manufacturing, but I really think that's a pipe dream and not something that is likely to be accomplished. And we could even raise questions about whether or not, in a broad-based way, that's a desirable goal.
The rationale, how about stop ripping off America, stop abusing America, especially our allied countries, most of whom depend on the U.S. for their national security. Other big news today, tech giant NVIDIA announced a $500 billion investment right here in the USA, entirely manufacturing their supercomputers, AI infrastructure inside this country for the very first time. But according to ABC's John Carl, another elitist in the media, this type of investment is not actually a good thing. Apparently, he's worried that we will become, quote, a nation of cobblers. Take a look.
The president also said there's going to be a transition cost, transition problems. I mean, we are going to see higher prices in America as well. It's not like you can open a factory tomorrow to build iPhones or to make sneakers, shoes. I mean, we buy a lot of shoes in this country. 99% of them are made elsewhere. I mean, are we going to become nation of cobblers again? I mean, this is going to mean higher prices, isn't it?
I mean, have you seen, I don't necessarily think so. I think the idea is that we can manufacture here in America.
All right, as a former blue-collar worker for decades of my life, I kind of take it as a compliment, but this isn't just about good American jobs. It's also a matter of national security. You know, relying on China for pharmaceuticals or other countries for semiconductor chips, that's a dangerous game. And right on cue, China just suspended exports of rare earth minerals to the U.S. in a blatant attempt to kneecap weapons and tech manufacturing. So Donald Trump is absolutely right. This reliance on China and other countries will come to an end once and for all. They can have free and fair trade if they choose, or reciprocal tariffs. That's their choice. The president will almost never get any positive coverage from the legacy media mob. The good news is almost no one in the U.S. trusts or respects these people anyway. So what's the point? It doesn't really matter what they say or what they write any place, anywhere. Anyway, these far-left Democrats pretending to be newsmen are screaming into the void. Here with reaction, the host of Making Money on the Fox Business Network, Charles Payne, is here. Charles, you know, let's take an example. European Union, do they not rely on the U.S. and NATO? Don't they rely on the U.S. for a lot of their national security needs? And aren't they supposed to be our allies? And if they are, can you explain why the EU sells nearly $50 billion worth of automobiles in the U.S. every year, while we sell a little over $8 billion? That would be unfair. Is it because of the 10% tariff to our 2.5% tariff, or the 20% VAT tax, which adds 30% to the sticker price, which makes that car from the U.S. cost prohibitive? Maybe that's not the way friends should treat each other.
Yeah, it's all of the above, and I guess it's like the dysfunctional relationship maybe someone has with a neighbor that's borrowed the lawnmower, that's borrowed this, that's borrowed that, that's borrowed money, and never mentions it, never bothers to give it back. You know, you take things for granted, and you know, you go back to after World War II, we rebuilt Europe, right? I mean, and since then we've kind of taken this on. You go back to the general account, you know, to first tariff agreement, the global tariff agreement. The world was in tatters. We as a nation helped to rebuild the entire world, starting with Europe, and we just lost track of everything. We just were sort of sitting on this perch, and we said, well, let China enter the World Trade Organization. 2001. Look at any significant data since then with respect to U.S. manufacturing jobs, output, all this stuff, and it's really abysmal. And they still are considered an emerging growth nation, even though they're the number 2 economy in the world. So it's unfortunate that our quote-unquote friends have treated us this way, but we're up. You know, they used to talk about being woke. This is really being awake right now, and we're doing something about it while we can. You know, those folks out there who say, well, we can't build a factory overnight. That is the dumbest excuse for not doing the right thing I've ever heard. It is like a little child saying something stupid about not doing their homework. Of course, we can't make a manufacturing plant overnight, but we can get rid of regulations. We could dig a hole in the ground. We could give it the approval. And guess what? If it takes 2 years, 2 years flies by pretty quick. If it takes 5 years, 5 years flies by pretty quick. If you talk about doing things for your children and your grandchildren, if you really care, or you want to live in a moment, this woe is me, this is nuts. And what's wrong with these jobs? You know, China put out this video last week. I'm sure you saw it. Really disgusting, overweight, you know, obese guys slumping over a sewing machine, making fun of us, right? And we fed into that, this elitist attitude that dominates our media, that somehow these jobs where you work with your hands, blue-collar work, that it's gone. And they laugh at the notion that we would want to bring it back.
Yeah. You know, well, I did notice that the Prime Minister of Great Britain, and I thought this was pretty interesting, lifted tariffs on, 89 specific products. Obviously, Brexit separates them from the EU. You see India now wanting to talk to the U.S. You see countries in Asia wanting to talk to the U.S. Japan wants to talk to us. Taiwan, Korea wants to talk to us. I would imagine we're going to get deal after deal after deal, which to me, Donald Trump would get massive win after win after win, because this policy, this institutionalist mindset has been going on for 50 or 60 years. If he's able to stop that, that is a huge win for him.
It's a huge thing for America. It really is. We're talking about planting seeds right now so that our dominance, that a second American century goes on. You know, there have been great world powers in the past, and typically they have a 100-year run. We're past our date of expiration, if you look at it that way. And the way they fall apart, go back to the Roman Empire. They become complacent. They become fat, lazy. We don't want to become those things. We don't want to be complacent. And when someone says, well, we're 26% of the world's wealth, we used to be 40% of the world's wealth. We can't wake up when we're 10% and the snowball has become the proverbial boulder, right? We're going downhill right now, no matter what anybody says, and particularly inside the country, where the richest folks have gotten so much richer because the focus has been on the financialization of our nation. How money makes more money. That's all it is. One gimmick after another. And it's wonderful. Yeah, overall, the wealth is amazing, but it's shared less and less with the average American that's working paycheck to paycheck. So I just ask people out there who are worried and nervous, give it more than a week. Give it more than 2 weeks. This is a monumental what they're trying to achieve. When the news starts to roll out, listen to it. You'll be happy about it. And I think, again, this is not about President Trump in the next 3 years. This is about America in the next several decades.
Charles Payne, thank you as always.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.